Yeah, pay attention, Shield.
First of all, as a Devils fan, I'd like to offer my condolences to the tables over there.
What? That was rude. Table 9
I actually did root for him, to be honest with you. Good for the area.
Go, Frank.
The French philosopher Michel de Montaigne said, "I care not so much what I am to others as I respect what I am to myself." Slightly paraphrased, that was Robert Parisi's high school yearbook quote, and what I interpret as the mantra of the self-made man. A man who, at a much earlier age than most, recognized the importance of self-confidence, self-reliance, and self-esteem. 3 character traits that have driven his way of life as a traditional family man, a respected business leader, and as a dedicated public servant. I am honored to have been asked to introduce Robert and present him with this well-deserved recognition as Unico Man of the Year. Now, I could spend the next couple of minutes telling you about how Robert has served his community since as long as I can remember, how he's a founder of the Eagle Rock Civic Association, a founder of the West Orange Scholarship Fund, 12 years on the Township Council, last year elected for his second term, 4-year term as mayor, and as for Unico, serving for almost 20 years as the chairman of our largest and longest running and most successful fundraiser, our annual Sports Awards breakfast. I can tell you how he's been blessed with a beautiful and spirited family, his wife Sheila and their children Kelly and Robert. But I think most of you all here tonight know all of that. So I thought I'd share some other, more personal details that maybe you don't know about. I was considering a slideshow too, but I didn't think any good would come of that. While he and I didn't attend elementary or junior high school together, my history with Robert still predates our high school years. Robert's sister Carol and my sister Camille had been friends for many, many years, and once Robert and I found out that we shared an affinity for street hockey, Robert invited me to the other side of town to participate in Colgate Park hockey, which was a lot different than the less hostile Gregory and Hazel hockey, which I had become accustomed to. They're a tough group of kids who welcomed me with bruises, albeit, into their makeshift tennis court hockey rink. We also used to wear sneakers in those days when we played, but Robert Parisi, unconventionally, used to wear roller skates, and he still played better than most. That was the first indication that he cared not about what others thought, as long as he was comfortable with himself, which he always seemed to be. As we made our way through high school, I witnessed, with some envy I must admit, the way Robert chose to live his life. He was successful academically and athletically, and was even given the class superlative of best looking. I'm going to give him credit for the academics and the athletics, but that best looking thing was a popularity contest because I was way better looking than him. Robert did things his own way, not necessarily what was popular at the moment, and he never seemed to pass judgment on anyone else for the way they chose to live their life. I was also fortunate enough to have a first-hand glimpse at the foundation from which he was built. A foundation that was financially humble, yet rich in love, respect, honesty, and work ethic. Robert continues to carry that moral torch that his parents passed down and is reflected in his daily life, no matter what hat he might be wearing that day. Following high school, Robert and I, and most of our friends, all experienced the trials and tribulations of young adulthood. Our paths don't always take us immediately in the direction we anticipate growing up. Those diversions can often put us off course, but not Robert. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the author Stephen Covey. However, as my children have often been lectured, Dr. Covey opines that we as people and as families will be off track 90% of the time. The track symbolizing where we believe we should be in all aspects of life. He uses the analogy of an airplane when he says that an airplane will fly off course for most of its journey. However, if the pilot can embrace 3 basic tools, he'll have a successful flight. A clear vision of his destination, that's where he wants to go, a flight plan, how he'll get there, and a compass, the resources he'll need for the journey. Dr. Covey's wisdom has been validated in the personal, professional, and spiritual life of Robert Parisi. He's a man I've respected since childhood, and even though I never thought politics would have found him, nor did I one day think he'd actually be my boss, my respect and admiration for him hasn't wavered in the last 35 years. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Parisi.
Thank you. I'd like to start tonight by congratulating Frank, our new president, and to offer you, Frank, whatever support I can give you in hopes of making your year as president successful. So congratulations, Frank. Tony mentioned that we did know each other in high school, but sometimes traveled in different circles, different neighborhoods. And as he mentioned, I first knew of Tony as being Sissy's younger brother before anything else. But Tony, if someone would have come to me in high school and told me that time and Unico would make us good friends, that fate would have us working together for the town, and that I'd have the pleasure of seeing you sworn in as a captain of our fire department, and have the privilege of swearing you in as deputy chief of our fire department, and that together we would share nights like this with our family, I would have thought it's okay with me. Thank you for the wonderful comments, Tony, and for years of friendship. I would like to be able to tell you tonight that I joined Unico because of a deep spiritual connection to my academic heritage. But the truth is, I joined the chapter because of the sports breakfast. I'd gone to the breakfast many times as a child and a few times into young adulthood. When I went again in 1992, because a friend was being honored, I looked around and I realized that I knew a lot of the guys who were serving breakfast, and I thought I'd like to be a part of that. So I reached out to Mr. Spinelli, who at the time was a customer. I was his gardener at the time. And he explained to me how I could join, and he sponsored me for membership. And I joined a few months after breakfast that year. And the first thing I did after joining was to sign up for the sports breakfast committee. And I had the pleasure of working with Rocco Viola for many years. I got to know Mr. DeMeo and Stanziel and Francos, the Ipalulos, many wonderful people from serving on that breakfast committee. And in that first year, after joining the chapter in that breakfast, my dad was nominated as one of the honorees. Naturally, as a member of the committee, I was asked to introduce him. I'll let you in on a little secret. It was the first time I had ever been asked to speak publicly, and the first time I ever actually spoke publicly, and was pretty nervous about it that entire winter. One night after a committee meeting, I brought the paperwork home. I left it on the kitchen table, and we still lived at home. She and I weren't married yet. And my dad, who was a very quiet and shy guy, saw the paperwork, saw the agenda, saw that he was listed as one of the honorees, and he hadn't been notified yet. So he saw it, and he said, "What is this? Is this me? I gotta speak at this event?" So I tried to hide my own fear of the situation, and I assured him that he shouldn't worry about it, that he really just had to say thank you, and he should enjoy the honor. That breakfast turned out to be a really nice day for our family. And I think one of the reasons I always really enjoy the breakfast, because it honors people who don't always get honored, but deserve to be. Other than the St. Patrick's Day Parade in our township, the sports breakfast is the longest running event in our community and is still as special today as it was in the very beginning. And for that, all of us owe our gratitude to its founder, Mr. Spinelli. When I was a kid, I don't think I realized I was growing up Italian. I just figured everyone ate the way we did. It wasn't until high school when I got to be a good friend with a few guys who weren't Italian. And as Tony mentioned, nearly every Sunday we would play street hockey at Colgate Park. Or even sometimes, as he mentioned, anywhere around town if we could convince guys to play with us. And then we would get together for video games. My brother, too, often joined us. It wasn't long before our house became the go-to house for the video games because my friends realized that if they stuck around long enough, eventually my mom would ask them to stay for dinner. Two of those friends were actually brothers, and their mom, Mrs. Lynch, used to send my mom food because she felt guilty of how often my mom was feeding her kids. My grandfather used to come to dinner a lot on Sundays as well. He didn't speak a lot of English, but I guess he too got accustomed to seeing the guys at the table because when they weren't there, he'd ask, "The boys, where are the boys?" I'm not sure how much of the conversation my grandfather ever really understood, but like a good Italian, he enjoyed a dinner table that was filled with good food and he was surrounded with friends, family, and laughter. My grandfather, my father's father, our family namesake, was the only grandparent I ever knew. My dad's mom and my mom's parents all died very young. And my grandfather was a bit of the cliche of the Italian man of his age. He was short. He made his living as a tailor. He always wore shirt sleeves and a tie almost every day of his life. And any free minute he ever had, he usually spent at the social club playing cards with guys from the old country. But unlike a lot of today's immigrant population, my grandfather and others like him held tight to their Italian culture, but they came to this country to be Americans. They overcame challenges, they overcame obstacles, they survived prejudice, they survived decades of negative stereotypes to build a better life for themselves and their families. And 3 generations later, Italians are a very important part of the American story. Now, my children are not growing up Italian. In fact, in many ways, they are the first generation since the Ellis Island generation that is really growing up American. My daughter Kelly and my son Robert are born to an Italian father and an Irish mother. My wife Sheila is from a family that is as steeped in Irish tradition as we are in Italian tradition. And when you mix that in with a lot of modern traditions, they benefit from that. They're cousins too. My sister Linda is married to a proud Irishman, Jim Garton. My brother Danny, his wife Mary Ann, also of Irish heritage. And my sister Carol, who we mentioned, lives in California. It's actually where my mom is tonight on a rescheduled trip. She moved to California in the late 80s and married a native Californian from Mexico. And as much as my sister Carol grew up with the Italian tradition of the 7 fishes and macaroni on Christmas Eve, her kids only know the Mexican tradition of Christmas Eve, homemade tamales. And though I would never suppose to speak for my grandfather, I'm pretty sure he'd be happy about that. And he'd be proud of the very proud American family that is born from his sacrifice. Thank you so much for this honor. And thank you for being an important part of my family's life. So